Hi, everybody. How's it going? Excuse me. All right. I think I'm set up. I believe. John McKee with the roll call. We got John, we got Bill, we got Hank, Matthew, Webb, Brian, Eugene, Frank, Chuck, Amy, David, Donna. I was just about to ask about that. Sorry, I'm reading about the COVID vaccines in the chat room. Is this joke going to be offensive? What's green and stays out all night? Okay, that's cute. This shirt was a gift, by the way. I know I said yesterday I'm wearing a T-shirt, and I shouldn't. I'm actually wearing a T-shirt tomorrow as well because I got a new one I want to tell you all about. But this was a gift from someone. I know there's no four-leaf clover in Star Trek, and also I know it's a shamrock, not a four-leaf clover. But it was a gift, and it's fun. So there we go. And also green lights in the background, and a song in my heart. It may be Danny Boy. Let's see. Wow, David, that's terrible. Right. I have a friend who got the second shot, and she said that it was worse. She said the first shot was worse than the second. She's an educator. Yeah, she was really incoherent with the first shot. The second shot, she just didn't feel good. She said, nobody asked me, but I'm just trying to be part of the conversation. Right. Why don't we do a thing? Okay. I'm recording. You guys are here. Let's do a show. Ish. App stores, commissions, and Sweeney. It is Wednesday, the 17th of March, 2021. I'm Ken Ray, and this is macOS Ken Live. I should do that over, but I'm not gonna, because it's live, and that's the way it happened when it was live. I don't know if I mentioned this. Hi, I'm Ken Ray, and this is macOS Ken Live. Yeah, the show that we do Monday through Friday, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, other times, other places, talking over some stuff that has been on macOS Ken, which is my daily Apple News and news related to Apple News show. Sometimes we talk about stuff that's not on there. For example, all day yesterday, we talked about stuff that I was sure was going to be on today's macOS Ken, and then it wasn't. And if you're curious what that was, go back and listen to yesterday's macOS Ken Live. Today, we are covering stuff that was talked about on today's macOS Ken. And it has to do with the whole App Store commission thing. So last year, Apple shook up the world by saying, here's what we're going to do. We're going to lower commissions for most people who make apps. Commissions for most people who make apps are going to go down to 15% instead of 30%. Because a lot of people put their stuff in the App Store, and of course, they don't charge a thing. It's all ad supported or it's just free, kind of like a Hello World type stuff, right? But then for people who make sales, Apple was charging a 30% commission. It has been that way since 2008 when they opened the App Store. And then, yeah, every now and then people would make a little bit of noise about how that should be less. And then last year, Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic Games and Epic Software, I think, makers of the Unreal Engine. Yeah, he made a lot of real noise. Like he actually just changed it so that he could sell his own stuff through his own app, which not surprisingly got him kicked out of the App Store. And so he sued immediately. In fact, that lawsuit was ready to go because he knew that that's what was going to happen. And the reason we're revisiting him is because we're going to revisit him in just a moment. So yesterday, I guess it was, came word from Google that they're going to do the same thing that Apple's doing, but they're actually doing it a bit better. So instead of, so the way it went with Apple was if you make less than $1 million on your app, and of course, the whole thing has to be based on what happened last year because who knows how this year is going to go in any given year. If you make less than $1 million on your app, then Apple is only going to take 15% of your sales. If you make over $1 million, Apple's going to take 30%. Now, Google is doing something similar. They're only going to take $1 million if you make, they're only going to take 15% if you make $1 million, but they're only going to take 15% off that first $1 million. So if you make up to $1 million, Google takes 15%. If you make $1.2 million, was the example that Ars Technica gave us, Google's going to take 15% off that first million and then 30% off everything above that first million, which may sound like splitting hairs, but it's actually kind of a big deal. Now, I was almost late to today's show because I was trying to do math, which I think is the only course I ever got an F in. I mean, for like a whole semester, not a semester, 8th grade, I think I got a 60, which if memory serves is failing. But it was only one 6-week period, and it did not reflect on my permanent record. I was trying to do the math on this because I remember when this first came out, there was a straddling line around $1 million where it's like if you make $970,000 or 1.05 million or maybe 1.1 million, something like that, you actually end up taking home more money if you make $970,000. Did I say million? There's a fine line in there where you're better off not cresting that $1 million because the second you get over $1 million, then Apple has taken 30% of everything you've made as opposed to 15% of everything that you've made. Ars Technica actually did a better job yesterday, basically pointing out, well, I could read the whole thing, but it's just a word problem. The long and the short of it is Google is giving people a better deal. Now, of course, you don't make as many ad sales, or you don't make as many app sales through Google as you do through Apple. So, is it better to have more of less? I guess is the question. And I guess it depends on what your app is as well. I don't think Fortnite is hurting in either app store. Well, actually, Fortnite's not in either app store, but when they were in the app stores, I don't think they were hurting in either one. The question has to do more, I think, with smaller apps and discoverability and things like that. The willingness of the Android toting population to pay for apps the way the Apple population does. Jeff Gamet on the Wheel of Stuff this week is going to talk about an app, and then we're going to look it up on the App Store, and it's going to cost $20. And what's funny is his feeling was, well, it's only $20. I'm not saying Jeff is rich. I'm saying that is an app that he uses so much that $20 is, I won't say it's negligible, but he thinks that $20 is worth it. I would imagine there are some apps like that in the Android App Store or the Google Play Store. I would imagine there are some people who use their Android phones that way. I don't imagine the number is quite as big. Anyway, that's part of what's going on with the Google Apple thing. It seems obvious that Google is now doing the 15% thing because Apple did the 15% thing earlier this year. Apple's went into effect on the 1st of January. Google's is going to go into effect on the 1st of July. They were both charging 30%, and that was just the way it was. Then Apple did their 15% of the first million. Google said, I'll see it and I'll lower it, but raise it as far as Apple is concerned. I now wonder if Apple will or should go back and restructure their thing because it's a better deal for Google, and Google makes less money on the App Store. Google is a less valuable company. Apple can more easily afford to do that. And the thing is, if you had asked me yesterday if what Apple was doing was good, I'd have said yes. Now that somebody is doing something better, the question is what Apple's doing good enough? And that'll be up to, the small developers of the world to decide. The other thing that I found interesting, the CNET piece that talked about this change had Samir Samat, he is Google's VP of product management, saying, with this change, 99% of developers globally that sell digital goods and services with Play will see a 50% reduction in fees. Which, I mean, if we're going to get to the point of parsing what's the difference between 900,000 and 1.2 million, that would seem to indicate that 99% of the apps in the Google Play Store make less than $1 million. Now, I don't imagine that number is much bigger in the App Store, honestly. And there was a fascinating piece in CNBC as well that talked about how little money this costs Apple and Google in terms of the amount of money they have. So here's what CNBC said. If the 15% fee schedule on revenue up to $1 million had been in place last year for Google Play, Google would have to have paid out or not gotten. It wouldn't have paid it out, but they would have lost compared to what they made in 2020, $587 million, which sounds like a lot, but that's based on the $11.6 billion that Google Play took in terms of fees for the year. This is according to numbers from Sensor Tower. And of course, they're guessing because neither Apple nor Google say exactly how much they make, but you get the idea. The CNBC piece went on to say if Apple's program had been in place for 2020, Sensor Tower estimates that it would have missed out on $595 million, or about 2.7% of its estimated $21.7 billion in App Store fees in 2020. Apple could afford to make it, 15% for that first million. Now, I know also that we talked about the fact that if you're at a line where you're like, oh man, if we make, so we're going to make $980,000. If we make $20,000 more dollars, we're hosed. I mean, at that point, you're playing, I think, with big enough money that you should be looking at other ways to monetize, or and I hate to do the whole thing. It's like, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Eventually, you're talking about real money. If you're butting up against $1 million, it feels like there ought to be a way to go ahead and make enough over $1 million that you don't have to worry about crossing that $1 million line. It's easy for me to say. I can only dream of numbers like that. And when I would have those dreams, they would make as much sense as a dream about a snake wearing a vest. These are not the kinds of numbers that I would be playing with. But it's easy to stand on the sidelines and say, well, here's what they should do. Speaking of which, Tim Sweeney, huh? That guy. So it's really had nothing to do with him, except, of course, he started it. We talked earlier about the fact that Tim Sweeney came in and said this should be different. And so then they opened up their own App Store thing, and he eliminated the 30% commission on the stuff that they sold through their own app, bypassing Apple's App Store and Apple's in-app purchase mechanism, which of course got him kicked out of the App Store that day, which of course led to lawyers showing up in court the next day saying, hang on a second. So Tim Sweeney yesterday went on to Twitter to say this whole thing still stinks. Unhappy with the changes. A guy who will not be greatly affected by the changes, what I said on macOS Ken. Yeah, CNBC did a great sort of understated. I love this, actually. Epic Games is currently suing Apple and Google, seeking to make changes to their App Store to allow for third-party payment processors as well as other changes. That is so like a tiny bit of what's going on. I mean, sure, there is that. There's also all the different court cases going on in all the different state houses across the country. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The thing in Arizona is trucking along. The thing in North Dakota stopped. There's some place in the South. Was it Mississippi? I think that was looking to do the same thing. It's not just what's happening in the App Store, and it's not just what's happening in court between the two, but, I digress. Tim Sweeney said about the change that Google is making, and of course, hearkening back to the change that Apple made as well, it is a self-serving gambit. The far majority of developers to get this new 15% rate and thus be less inclined to fight, will get this new 15% rate and thus be less inclined to fight, but the far majority of revenue is in apps with the 30% rate. so Google and Apple can continue to inflate prices and fleece consumers with their app taxes. I have no sympathy for Tim Sweeney, and I'm not sure he's wrong. And I don't like that I'm not sure he's wrong, but here's the thing, that $1,000,000 line is an arbitrary line, right? If 30% is the cost, then 30% is the cost. And you can say, well, Apple is doing this thing to help small businesses, and that's great. Epic is valued at $17.3 billion, according to something that I saw from another CNBC article. Epic can afford, for Apple to be nice and for Google to be nice to smaller companies. I do also understand, his being perturbed, let's say, that eventually he gets to a place where somebody has to spend the 30 million, or I'm sorry, has to pay the 30% commission on sales over $1 million and other people don't. The thing is, though, his rhetoric is still just incendiary. Google and Apple can continue to inflate prices and fleece consumers with their Apple taxes. Pal, they have a business plan. You also have a business plan. Their business plan includes charging 30% commission. And now it includes charging 30% commission over $1 million and 15% under $1 million. You also have a business plan. Your business plan calls for you to make however much money you make. And it is not as if them getting rid of their 30% automatically means that Epic Games is really going to lower their prices by 30%. It's still just Tim Sweeney wanting the money that Tim Sweeney wants. Now, you can argue about what's fair and what's not, I guess. Epic is worth $17.3 billion. It's kind of, I don't know. The whole thing remains ugly. Hey, it goes to court, what, month after next, though? May, which means we could stop talking about this in 3 years. Maybe a little bit sooner. So I think that's about all I've got for today, actually. I know I usually do a second half thing, or here's what we're going to talk about next. I will say there's one funny thing going on. Did you hear about Justin Long? Justin Long from the I'm a Mac, I'm a PC campaign. He was the Mac. He was the cool one. He was the one we liked. He was the one we sided with. He's now pitching for Intel. And I've only seen one of the ads. And what's funny is like all of the things in all the Apple press are like making fun of Intel for being desperate. And sure, it looks a little desperate, but it's also, it's advertising. One article made it really got kind of harsh on Justin Long for turning on Apple like he's not a paid actor, right? I will say I've only seen one of the ads. I thought it was funny because Justin Long is a good comedic actor. I mean, he's not, Buster Keaton. He's not Charles Grodin, but he can deliver on timing, and it was well directed. And whatever, it's a thing. I'm glad to see him getting work. And Intel really needs to find another fight, just because one headline that I saw is Intel stop. They're not coming back, and it's true. Anyway, that's a fun thing going on. Yeah, I think that's going to do it for today. Let's see. In a few minutes tomorrow with Jeff Gamet, we are going to be talking about AR and VR. And what's interesting is there's kind of a tie-in from yesterday's or today, as we're sitting here today, the NFT conversation that he and I had on Wednesday's show. So be sure and check that out. macOS Ken goes again tomorrow morning. macOS Ken Live goes again tomorrow afternoon. And I will talk to you soon. Oh, I'm getting serious. I got my glasses on. But I've got my coffee, which makes me less serious. Where are we? Going back up there. Start of the show. David and John, you both had COVID? Sorry, I'm still reading about your adventures in COVID vaccines. Bill says it's still weird where $20 for an iPad app is high end and for a Mac app it's entry level. It's true. It's because we put them in our pockets and because the App Store started with free games and fart apps, right? $99 was $99, 99 cents was how much you paid for an app for the most part. And I'll be honest, I said, well, whatever. I work from home, as you know. It's hard for me to think about spending like $5 on an app because most of what a $5 app would do, I can just do on my computer, which is, always with me because I'm always here. Does a snake vest still have armholes? It's from Pee-wee's Big Adventure. When Simone is talking about her dream, I think it's to go to Paris, and Pee-wee says, "I have a dream. I'm rolling a giant donut, and a snake with a vest comes up to me." It's inappropriate. Apple tax is a stupid term. Well, it's because we hate taxes. And we say that openly. And so then they can say Apple tax, and then state legislators can go, yeah, Apple tax. Right? Yeah, what Eugene said. Tax is being used to weaponize the emotions. It's not a tax. Right, it's a commission. We've talked about this before. I almost didn't want to do this topic today because we've talked about this before. But, Bill says Intel making ads and CPUs like it's 2001. That'd be great. You show all those people in those clean suits like they used to wear, shaking their groove things. Yeah, yeah. And showing us how we do it. Hodgman did come back and show for Apple, didn't he? What was it? Was it at the end of the it was the end of the Apple Silicon event, wasn't it? Or was it WWDC? Last year he showed up huffing and puffing. Fever Dreams and COVID Toe sounds like the worst cop team ever. Bill says he has iPad apps that cost $100 a year, but they're specialized and they're worth it. I get that. I mean, if I found the app that well, see, I've got the whole problem though with my iPad. I don't have any problem. It's all great. If I found the right app, if I found an app that it's like, this is the only place I can do this and this is the perfect place to do this, then yes. I mean, then the money's I don't want to say the money's no object, but it just becomes a cost of doing business, right? Like the whole thing with Adobe Audition, which I know is very different. That doesn't happen on the iPad, but I was dead set against paying a subscription for software. Just dead set against paying a subscription for software, but Adobe Audition, I've used a version of that app since 98, back when it was cool at it Pro. And so when they were like, yeah, if you want to use it on the Mac, you're going to have to pay a subscription, it becomes the cost of doing business. So there you go. Yeah, and yes, if it's business, it is a write-off. I do write that off every year, Frank, yes. I came across a story, it's funny, John, what was it the I Am Rich app? It was $1,000, and that's pretty much all it was, and Apple ended up it was just to show that you were wealthy. I don't even know if it offered any real benefit, and Apple ended up kicking it out of the App Store because it didn't do anything. Although I would argue that it actually did what it was supposed to. It was, if you wanna flaunt your wealth, then there you go. Kinda goes to the NFT thing that we were talking about. Yeah, for a red button, $1,000 for a red button. Kinda goes to the NFT thing that Jeff and I were talking about, today in a few minutes. How is somebody paying millions of dollars for Jack Dorsey's first tweet? I mean, like, whatever, flaunt it. I think there is something to what Jeff was talking about with the certificate and things. I got an email from somebody who said that Jeff was crazy saying that. Honestly, I kinda wish I had tied yesterday's show and I mean, sorry, today's show and tomorrow's show in a few minutes together because he almost gives me an aha moment about NFT, but it doesn't happen until Thursday's show. Ooh, teasing that show all over the place, aren't I? Interesting. Matthew says, "Spending $1,000 on an app to show that you're rich is like buying an Hermes Apple Watch." He may be onto something. Yeah, I don't wanna spoil it, Eugene, and I'm not there, really. Well, I'm gonna spoil it. When we start dealing more with virtual reality and augmented reality, then they might become more interesting. Now, science fiction ahead, when we all start uploading ourselves into the mainframe or putting ourselves in the matrix, then you'll wanna know that it's actually me as opposed to somebody imitating me. But even the whole AR, VR thing, I would think then you could actually have something for NFT. If instead of a paper certificate that somebody could, hand over or whatever, if there's a way to verify through AR that the thing that you have is an actual thing, perhaps using NFT, he sort of started to turn me on it a tiny bit. The thing is, there is a bunch of insanity around it right now as well. Millionaires spending millions of dollars for no better reason to own something that you really can't own. You can't own Jack Dorsey's first tweet. You can't. I mean, it's ludicrous, but it gets people talking about it, and plus, it's millionaires just with screw you money, which is not nearly what I was about to say. Makes you want to tax the rich and feed the poor, says Eugene. Yeah, Bill. Yeah, NFT trying to take a easily reproducible bit of electronic content and make it rare. It's a bit nuts. Just like one day we'll look up in the stars through our AR glasses, and it'll tell us who owns each one of them because they bought them off the TV at 2 in the morning. All right, that's gonna do it for today. I think I need to go turn this into a show, and then how about an NFT passport? I'm gonna hold off on talking about that because I have no idea. Ursa Minor, brought to you by Pepsi. No, I wasn't thinking about that. The thing that they used to have, like, we could call an 800 number and you could buy a star, and they would send you a star chart telling you exactly where your star was. We did mention the tulip bulb thing, Matthew, on the in a few minutes. So there we go. Oh, nice. Chuck's going to watch the Dropkick Murphys. They're streaming from Ireland, I think. Right. Everybody, take care. Have a wonderful evening. We'll talk tomorrow. Happy St. Patrick's Day.